Hello and welcome back to Unleash Your Inner Athlete. Now, are you one of these people, you've suffered with some condition or ailment and it's just not getting any better? And you've gone down that route of seeing every different possible kind of specialist, or looking at your health and wellness and your body from a different perspective, trying to come to some resolution. And sometimes the information, the help you get a little bit better, but then it comes back. Or sometimes it may even come back worse. And you're now in that position where you think, no matter what I do, I'm going to be stuck using lotions, potions, ointments, medication for the rest of your life. And this is now beginning to cause stress and so you can't show up in your life in the way you would like. Well, believe it or not, there's more to health than just medicine, treatment, prevention, lifestyle.
Alongside something else, because they haven't architected the system to do it. They dictate how you can interpret and use that information. And I just don't want to live in a world like that because of my own health journey.
Well, believe it or not, we need to have a more integrative approach to the way we look at our health and wellness. And as I say, medicine is so good and we're so grateful for having medicine because it does save lives. But could it be the choices you make and the environment that actually sustains that life? Well, my guest today has been down this route. He's gone through this process. He is been where you are today. And he is now the CEO of a company called Vitaspan, which is the cutting edge of AI, transforming preventative health. His career has spanned Fortune 500 companies, startups, and global leadership. And it's his powerful vision that integration is the future of health. So without further ado, I would like to welcome to the show, Mark Jackson. Welcome, Mark. Thank you for being here. Now, I know we got into this conversation because I saw a post of yours on LinkedIn about your own journey through, having skin condition and all. We're going to get into that story a little bit to share with everybody. And I want to leave that to you to go into. But now, obviously, you have this fantastically successful business and you've taken what you've learned through your life and through these experiences. And now you've created this new way of looking at health. So before we get into all of that and we get into what your company is doing and where you are now, so tell us that story, explain to people how you came to where you are now and your views on integrative health.
Thank you. Well, thanks very much for the wonderful introduction as well, in which we structure the data, rate it, we standardize and we normalize, and we create what's called a common data model, which basically in plain English means that you compare and contrast data along different timelines. So I can basically then use that data to power algorithms, predict the likelihood of things happening to you with an extremely high degree of accuracy. So, for example, cardiovascular disease, whether you're high, low, or medium risk, with a 93% accuracy, which is far higher than the systems which are currently used within the NHS.
That's incredible.
And that's been trained on 15 years worth of data and about 30 million plus patient records. And we decided, rather than spending years in research doing this ourselves, what became Thomson Reuters. And that was a global organization. So I went from a kid who grew up in sort of Hertfordshire in a place called Bushey, going to a comprehensive school, getting out into work, earning a paltry salary, finding a job as a financial analyst, and then eventually being headhunted by what became Thomson Reuters. There's a lot of gaps in what I've just described, but in essence, that's the arc of the story, of the journey. And that then gave me an opportunity to start to travel the world. This company that I joined had offices everywhere, but didn't have anything in the Middle East. And I basically built a plan to say, look, let me move to the Middle East in 2006, this was, to launch our first office in the region. So I moved there in 2006, which is in Dubai, set the company up in the Dubai International Financial Center, spent 2.5 years building the company and growing the company. Then we bought Reuters for $14 billion and I ran sales for a part of the business in Middle East and Africa. And then a reorg happened 2.5 years later, so 5 years in total in the Middle East, went to America and worked in the corporate headquarters, and spent 8 years there with Thomson Reuters, and then left and joined a private company and eventually came back to the UK. And the reason I say all of that is what struck me was how difficult these moves abroad were not least because there's lots of logistical stuff to happen. You've got to pack
Yeah.
your house up and then you've got to move somewhere. But just the things that you don't really take that much consideration of when you're younger. I did that first move in my 30s. Is I left the UK having all of my medical information in the NHS, moved to Dubai. Suddenly nobody knows me. I've got to, if I see a doctor, try and remember and recount the health history and tell them what had happened, and had some stuff in Dubai, etc. Then moved to America, had the same problem again. 5 years worth of data in the UAE, not transferred to the US. Spent 11 years in total in the US, generated data, medical information, not only for me but for my wife Helen. Had a son in the US, and then in 21 we moved back to the UK. And again, the same thing happens once again. We've got medical history now scattered around the world. We're not connected to it. It's at best buried in an email where I may have a scan or something or a lab result, but I don't have access to it. I'm not empowered to take control. And that was the reason for launching Vitaspan, just to bring all of that data together and put people in complete control over all of their health information. But the other sort of underlying reasons, which I'll sort of come on, one was something that particularly happened to me, and then other things that happened to my broader family. So the thing that happened to me is, whilst in America, I just transferred to the US. I'd basically taken on a quite high-profile job, very stressful. It was leading a sales group, and our mission was to basically usurp the competition, the number one competitor in the marketplace. We had to go and usurp them. We had a new product. It didn't behave as we expected it to, and the market didn't react in the way that we wanted it to. Pressure cranked up, and this is a new team designed specifically to achieve that task. The environment was toxic. People weren't working collaboratively. The product wasn't delivering as expected. Customers weren't buying it. It just cranked up more and more pressure. And what that led to is, for me, a sort of a breakdown in terms of my sort of equilibrium, because things were out of balance. And what happened specifically was I developed eczema. And this eczema was very, very severe. And it was around my face, around my sort of the shaving area. And being in frontline sales leadership, it was hugely problematic, because I've got to be on stage, I've got to speak to people, I've got to always be publicly visible. And so that led to even more stress and anxiety. And I was beside myself thinking, what on earth can I do about this? How can I treat this problem? As much like anyone does with eczema, we all get told it's incurable. There's nothing that you can do about it. And the only thing that you can do is manage it with steroids and meds, basically.
Yeah. That's the common way people go, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's very, very unfortunate. That's the sort of the path, because it absolutely is. And I'll come on to the how in a few minutes, or certainly from my personal experience, the how. But I went to see a dermatologist in New York, quite a fancy one, who was on Central Park South. So my insurance covered it at the time, which was great. I didn't have to pay because the fees were ridiculous. But the first thing he said to me is, sorry, it's incurable, and we just have to manage it with steroids. There's nothing you can do in the long term to alleviate it. And the consultation lasted about 10 minutes at most. He didn't really ask that many questions. He went into his back room and he came back with a syringe and injected me with it. And it was steroid. Right. And he said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to manage it with steroids. And I didn't really have much time to process what that meant, and received it and then went away, and it went. And I was thinking,
you didn't give him time to say, well, let me think about it. Nothing like that.
Not really, not enough time to sort of question it. And because I was probably in such a desperate state, I was very vulnerable to anything. So this is, I'm giving up my agency, my control to a expert, and not really giving myself enough sort of time to listen to my intuition. It was just desperation. Right, somebody's telling me there's nothing they can do, but they can help me manage it. Well, managing it's better than nothing. So okay, here's my arm and put this steroid in. And it went for about 4 weeks, and then it roared back with a vengeance. Like it was absolutely I can't describe how bad it was. My life was falling apart. I couldn't sleep.
Oh.
I was in constant pain, and it not only just sort of spread to my face now, it was across my entire body. And
Wow.
it was excruciating. I was falling apart, basically. Couldn't go to work, had to be off work for periods of time. And it was just an awful, awful experience. And then I gave myself some time. Well, actually, thankfully, my wife gave me some time. She went back to England and said, look, you've got to try and figure this out. My son was young, he was about sort of 1 year old. We're going to go back to the UK for a little bit, give you some time to figure out what to do. And so in that time, I had some sort of space to think. And somehow, I don't know how, but I sort of remembered something that I was using when I was younger, because I'd always suffered from a shaving rash as a young kid. And it'd been sort of in and out with this sort of condition and trying to manage it. And I'd gone to see the GP in my sort of early teens, and they said, look, it's a shaving rash and it's got infected and we need to give you antibiotics to solve that. And they did, and then it went. And we'll give you something called Batraban, which is a sort of an antiseptic cream, and that managed it. It sort of staved off the infection, because at that point, the people that I was interacting with, and actually myself, thinking of it as an external problem. So it's infected, that's an external problem, and it's not an internal thing. It's nothing to do, I didn't put the link that it's something to do with my immune system or something being out of balance. It was something external impacting me, and therefore this shaving cream and shaving rash was caused by problems external. Put the cream on, take some antibiotics, and it'd gone. And I'd managed through my teens with that issue, and it'd been okay. And it sort of would reoccur, it would come and go, but I sort of managed to solve it. But the thing that had given me more respite than anything I'd found was acupuncture. And I didn't really know at the time when I started using it, which is about sort of 15, 16, why it worked. I knew a little bit about the meridians and the electricity flow, but I didn't know much else about the mechanics and what was physiologically happening. But I used it and it seemed to work. So whenever this reoccurred, rather than go and see the doctor and have antibiotics from that point, I'd always go to see a acupuncturist and see if I could manage it through that process. So in New York, back to New York, I'm desperate, trying to figure out what the hell's going on. How do I solve it? I'm now not able to work. I'm in crippling pain. It was, look, I've got to go back to thinking of this in a more natural state. And I remember acupuncture worked, and it led me on this sort of trail to try and figure out what was happening and start to connect with naturopaths, connect with more complementary medical providers. And eventually I found a clinical nutritionist, and that was an absolute godsend. They basically said, look, I met them physically and put a very sort of comforting arm around me and said, look, we know what's you're going through. It's awful, but we think we know what's happening, and we know that we can cure this. So just trust us, work with us, and we'll solve the problem. And that just instantly lowered my anxiety. I just felt instantly at peace, that I'm now not desperate, literally trying to give up because I don't want to experience this pain, to now thinking there may be a solution to the to the problem. And the naturopath or clinical nutritionist basically said, we need to do some testing. So we need to figure out what's going on in your gut. We need to understand more about your lifestyle. We need to understand what you eat, how you relax, how you're operating, basically. And that was very, very revealing, because, as a sales leader, I operated in a high cortisol environment, meaning everything was fight or flight, constantly stress, targets, salespeople to manage, pressure. And then outside of that, I was playing football 3 times a week, which wasn't allowing a decompression. It wasn't allowing any of my cortisol to lower. It was always keeping it quite high and stimulated. And I was probably drinking a little bit too much, to try and reduce the pressure, not understanding what that did and had the reverse effect that I actually needed it to. Diet-wise was okay, not great. I'm probably having a little bit too much sugar, but I always ate organic foods. And they started to look at it all and just said, look, you are constantly in fight or flight. Your cortisol levels are through the roof. You're never in a state of peace. So we'd recommend not playing football 3 times a week for the time being, because we need to find something which is different. But most importantly, let's start looking at your microbiome, your gut, and let's understand what's happening inside. So I did a leaky gut test to start with, which is to figure out, was my intestinal wall permeable? Were things leaking through? And when I was eating food, were small particles of the food getting into the bloodstream or not? Because that causes inflammation and a reaction, and the body then goes into overdrive trying to fight the nasties in your bloodstream and attack it. And lo and behold, I had leaky gut. And then it was a process of saying, okay, well, what's caused the leaky gut? We know cortisol stimulates all sorts of problems. We think you may have something called candida overgrowth, but let's check for that. So we did some lab testing, etc. We think that you might have elevated levels of microplastics. We think that there might be elevated levels of heavy metal in your system. And so we did all this testing, and lo and behold, I did have candida. And candida feeds off of sugar, and it feeds off of cortisol. And what had happened is that the roots of the candida, which is basically a fungus, had punctured the cell lining. So that was the cause of the impermeability. So he said, right, we can't heal the gut until we've solved the candida issue. We can't solve the candida issue until we starve it of what it feeds upon, which is sugar and also a cortisol stimulated environment. So let's go back. And it was this wonderful journey of just basically going back to the root cause. So rather than focus on the symptom, get to the root.
And I think that's the problem with many things. They deal with the symptoms. They give you the medication. It's covering up the symptoms. But as your experience, getting back to that root cause is the key to everything.
Yeah. But the thing is, when we're all experiencing like a chronic condition, whatever it is, it's very, very difficult to give yourself time and space to listen to that inner wisdom and that intuition, because you're dealing with a chronic catastrophe where you're just literally trying to survive whatever it is. You're trying to survive, and you can't give yourself that time and space to connect, to get it. And that's where sort of guidance and support and help really comes to the fore, because a third party that's disconnected and detached from it can help you see the wood for the trees, get the overview and see the bigger picture, and link things that you can't because you're in the midst of, the inferno. And that's what this clinical nutritionist did. And what really blew me away was how quick the change was. So it was about 7 weeks of identifying and then working on this process that suddenly everything started to alleviate, and my life started to change dramatically, not only physically, but actually at work. Things started to change, more energy, more enthusiasm, doors were opening up, etc. And I couldn't believe how rapid it was. I went from a 36-inch waist to a 30. I went from a 42 suit size to a 38
in 7 weeks.
In about 7-8 weeks, and it stabilized quickly, the weight. So it wasn't like it was constantly just getting thinner and thinner and thinner. But what this nutritionist did is give me protocols to cleanse. So we used something called Damascus Earth to mechanically cleanse the lining of my stomach and my tract. It basically it's a powder, which is like a very, very fine powder. But on the powder, the I don't know what they're called, like the tiny little molecules of the powder are these hooks. So when you consume it, you mix it with liquid, you consume it, it gently scrapes through the intestinal system and takes away nasties with it. We did oxygen therapy to basically, again, create an oxygenated environment, because pathogens can't survive in that environment. We eventually moved on to putting, good probiotics. Once I've healed the gut, and I actually should talk about healing the gut, but once I'd healed the gut, we put in probiotics and prebiotics to get a much more rich microbiome in place. So it's not just sort of too concentrated one or the other. Healing the gut was about eating foods which were sympathetic to replenishing the gut lining. So things which were sort of sticky and slimy, things like okra, things like steamed leeks. When leeks go a little bit slimy,
Yeah, it doesn't sound very pleasant.
But honestly, I got to love this stuff, and it was so delicious. But eating whole foods, no processed foods whatsoever, all organic. Making sure that I'm drinking water that's filtered properly, so not from plastic bottles because they leach plastics into the system.
And we do. And with
Doing
the plastic bottles, we do tend to hold on to them for a while, refill them, and there's too many
it's not
chemicals.
good. It's
I mean,
not
where
good.
did they find that? Where did they think they got all this toxicity in your system? Where was that from, like the plastics, or were that from the medication, previous medication? So just so people are aware of what they're putting into their bodies that they may not be aware of.
It was a mixture. I mean, I think certainly the antibiotics are a nuclear option. They kill all of the bacteria, good or bad. They're indiscriminate. So if you take antibiotics and you take them regularly, you're destroying the flora in your gut, in your microbiome, and you've got to replenish it. If you have to take antibiotics, you've got to replenish that flora. The challenge with a lot of probiotics is the process of taking them destroys the very flora, because your enzymes in your gut, which break down food, break down the flora, so it doesn't actually get into your system. So you've got to think of other ways in which to get that flora replenished. So I did enemas, with the enriched microbiome protocol, etc. So that, certainly antibiotics, big problem, destroy the good and the bad, and leave you very, very vulnerable. Microplastics coming in, heavy metals are just unfortunately everywhere in products that we take, things that we consume. If you're drinking water from a tap, and you're not filtering it, there's just all sorts of things in our normal environment.
Even the air we breathe, I guess. Even the air we breathe.
The air we breathe. Yeah, exactly.
In a city.
Yeah, so all of those things compound and build up, and normally the body's pretty damn efficient at getting itself back to homeostasis, being in balance. But if you don't have the right scaffolding around you, and your life is out of balance with cortisol or bad food or too much alcohol, you're not equipping the body to be able to detoxify. And more so than ever, it needs to operate at its best just to be in balance because of the modern world that we're exposed to. So that whole thinking of working with this clinical nutritionist enabled me to go, right, okay, I've got a handle on it. I know what the root cause was. If I don't want to get back to that trigger point, which is cortisol overgrowth, which then eventually leads to, my case, eczema, I've got to put the right things around me. So I flipped from playing football 3 times a week to doing yoga and doing breath work and meditation. I started to sort of deepen my spiritual practice to create a scaffolding around me to enable me to operate effectively. And it's just funny how then things start to move in place. You start to get more aligned. Things happen you think of them as like synchronicities, and we talked about this previously. Synchronicities start to happen, and if you listen to them and don't treat them as just random events, but as actually signals, and you reflect upon them, you incorporate them, and you work on them, I truly believe that you then start to move forward in a really, really positive way and have a positive impact.
I think that's the thing, when you hear these signs, these signals, we tend to ignore them a little bit. We think, oh, it's just nonsense, because you're so focused on what you have to do. And when you're in a very high powered position, like as you were, you're just trying to keep going. It's like, it's that idea that you're on that, mouse wheel or whatever it is. You're just keeping going. And even though you think, I've got to do some fitness to keep myself fit, I've got to have some organic food, that balances it out. But actually the damage is already done, and what you're doing is compounding it, as you said, with adding that extra stress, albeit from a good place. Like the exercise is fantastic. I'm a great I've waved my flag for lots of exercise. But when you're in a high stress environment, it does add to that level of stress. But it is good in the sense that it does give you that buffer, so you can withstand a certain level of stress. There's research into that. But at the same time, it's knowing that for what you're particularly going through, because we're all individuals, we all need different things in our life at different times. That being able, as you said, you sort of had to change how you exercise as well, which is fascinating to me. It wasn't just going to the gym; you actually had to physically just change what you were doing.
Yeah, and it wasn't. I'm not saying like football is a bad thing. It was a bad thing for me at the time in consideration of everything else which was going on for me. And so picking the right exercise attuned for where you physically are at that moment is super important. So for now, I actually don't do yoga anymore. So I do meditate still, and I was using yoga to get to that meditative state. But I've swapped yoga out now for strength training. I'm 50, so I go to the gym and lift weights and do much more sort of strength-based stuff. And it's totally right for me now to do that. But it probably wasn't right for me to have incorporated that when I was trying to cure myself of chronic eczema and be in that state. So I think we definitely have to be a bit more conscientious about listening to ourselves, our body, our innate wisdom, and then picking things that are attuned for that particular period, which may not be forever. It might just be the cycle, the space where you're at now. But pick wisely and choose something which is aligned for what you need at that particular point in time, and not be dogmatic, because we can all get dogmatic and say, right, my schedule's this, and I'm this 3 times a week, I'm doing that, come what may. Well, actually, let's have a bit of flexibility. A bit of flex in there to say, right, is this what I need? Listen to yourself. Is this right? Sometimes it might be right to force yourself to go to the gym and run and exhaust yourself, but other times it might not. And don't beat yourself up about it. As long as you've got consistency and something's happening to replace that. One of the my wife talked about this the other day. She said, and I didn't know, we bought a rebounding machine, which sounds really complicated. It's basically a trampoline. And it's in the front room, and Helen rebounds for 10 minutes several times a day. And she just casually said, look, rebounding for 10 minutes is the equivalent of doing 10,000 steps. I said, no, I had no idea. And then she talked to me about what it does. And she said, it just gets your lymphatic system moving like nothing else, and blood flowing and cleansing and clearing through the system. So it's profoundly healing. And it's just 10 minutes. And actually it's quite enjoyable to do. It's not like running for like 5 miles and exhausting yourself. So it's been discerning about what the outcome you're trying to accomplish is, given where you are in your journey right now and how you may feel and what your body may need, and picking the right things to support that, and not going with the fad, not going with the crowd, not going with the external noise, and certainly not, I don't have any wearables. I'm not saying wearables are all bad, but not getting caught up in, I must do X because my watch is telling me I should do X, because you got to think, for what outcome? Like, what does
I think this is a problem I always have with wearables, and like you say, it's great for tracking if you've got like sleep and you want to track your sleep to help you get. But there's certain aspects of it that can be good and be beneficial. But if you don't know how to translate that data in some way that's beneficial for you, then what's the point? You've got to, as you say, you've got to kind of, I think, do you feel that people maybe, or we lose that connection with ourselves and stop listening, as you said earlier, stop listening to our body and what we need, because the latest trend isn't going to be suitable for you, and the way you need to look at your health and fitness as you get older is different to when you're in your teens and your 20s. And recovery is something that is becoming more and more important. And I think making time so much, particularly if you're in a very high-powered career, you're running a business or whatever it is you're doing, you don't take out enough time to relax, recover, switch off, because that's what brings your cortisol levels down. That's what calms the system down. Because, as you say, once those cortisol levels are very high, and if it's over an extended period of time and you have many different stresses coming at you all at once, and there's lots of things that you need to handle and deal with in your day, then what that does, you get an over amount of cortisol, and then that has the effect of affecting your hormones, and your immune system is suppressed, and you become more susceptible to health and wellness issues. So I think it's something it's taking that time out. Don't be fearful of taking time out and saying, I need, if it's 10 minutes, an hour, once a week, or whether it's a daily thing, a daily 5 minutes of meditation, whatever it is. I think making that time is going to pay dividends to you as you get older as well.
I think we can get caught up in the micro too quickly. And when you get caught up in the micro, you can't see the bigger picture. And if you can't see the bigger picture, you're then not able to holistically look at and listen to what it is actually that you need. The wearables can make you sort of fixate on a particular thing but
Become a
for
bit
what?
obsessive.
Yeah, for what purpose? Like, what's the intent? And I went to an event a couple of weeks back called the Health Optimization Summit, and there was a speech, or actually a conversation, on the last day. And one of the comments, and I can't remember the chap's name who made it. It's Ben something. He's quite a big sort of longevity speaker. But it really, really made me think. And it was this notion of, look, what we've all got to really concentrate on is the generations. So think about the things that you're doing now and the generational impact of the things that you're doing. So if let's say you're completely selfish, you don't care about anything else than your own family, just think of it from, you're here, you're the head of the family, wherever that may be. Think 7 generations into the future. And are the things that you're doing, the foundations that you're setting, the examples that you're setting, how are they going to manifest in your great grandchildren? Are they going to be taking this sort of a structure, a life lesson, a philosophy from what you're doing, and will that help them in the future? And if the answer is no, then what we've got to start doing is start looking at our own choices, our own decisions, to create that generational blueprint, if you like, of know-how and knowledge that transcends down to future generations to have a really positive impact.
Yeah. So it's like leading by example, really, isn't it?
Yeah, because we can't be isolationists. We can't think of this now and say, just right, okay, I've got to optimize my health and I'm doing it for me and that's it. Because you don't live as an isolated being. You're in a community, right? You've got family, you've got friends, you've got work colleagues, etc., etc. And everything that you ever do and everything that you ever say and all the energy that you give off impacts other people. And the energy that you receive, we're a part of something much, much bigger. So if we're not operating to our highest potential, or certainly trying to, and being on a journey to develop and grow, you can't have a positive impact on the world. You can't have a positive impact on your job. You can't have a positive impact on the people that work for you or you work for. You can't have a positive impact on society. So we've got to, I'm passionate about this, we've all got to lead and grow and develop and take ownership of our and responsibility ourselves. We cannot look externally for the fixes. We've got to start going internally. And you can only do that by listening and giving yourself time and space to think, what is it that I'm being told that I'm not listening to? And how do I start to listen to that intuitive voice, that inner wisdom that's trying to guide me, that I'm dismissing? I'm just saying, I'm too busy, I can't do that. Or, I'm just to ignore that. There's just a voice in my head that I'm just going to ignore. I'm going to go and do this. And current society is totally set up to make your life as miserable as possible.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who would agree with that.
Like, look at social media. Like, people are boasting about this and that and the other, and like showcasing this and that and the other, and making you feel worse because they've got this and you don't have that. It's a very materialistic society. And actually, that's not how we're meant to live. It's not how we want to live. We want to support and help and develop and grow and acting in a beneficial way to others, because we know that that's going to be good for us. And if you're a business person with aspirations, either you're running your own business now or you're a manager or aspirations to do that, you've got to think in those terms. It's not just about, well, what does the company need? And I'm going to get that person to deliver it. It's what does that person need? Because if I give that person exactly what they need to operate at their highest level, incredible things happen. Like the magic starts to happen, because that person now has got more energy. They're more inclined to do the things that you want them to do. They're more inclined actually to have a positive impact elsewhere. And if they left because you've helped them grow and develop and become something even better, guess what? They're more likely to get somebody into the role that they've just left and help you backfill, because they're saying, like, this is such a great company to work for. And so we just got to think just much more holistically and more macro and more long term, because actually it pays off. We feel better. Other people feel better. The society that we live in feels better.
So in some ways it comes back to our own accountability, doesn't it, really? For whatever's showing up in our lives and prolonging and continuing that we can't be blaming others. You've got to take a step back and say, okay, what is it I'm doing in this moment that is causing this behavior or this, this problem in my life, physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, whatever it is, and address that first. And as you did, you go back to find the cause, and then you come all the way forward and then start showing and leading people and showing them the new way of being.
Yeah.
And then that feeds into how other people show up as well, because they can look at you and say, well, he or she is doing great. What is it they're doing? I want to be like them. I want to have a good life. I want to be healthy. I want to be successful. What do I need to do? And having more of those positive role models, I think, is really important from all aspects in your life. I think not just
exactly. And usually the sort of like the negative pattern of behavior is the ego trying to survive.
Yeah.
And usually born out of fear. You know, something terrible has happened, which has made you sort of operate in that way. And when this type of external force comes in, you sort of default to that survival mechanism, fear-based thing. I guess you just got to take responsibility for it, work through it. People talk about, the shadow work, which is, working on the sort of like the things that you're not good at, the things that you need to develop, and whether it be greed, avarice, pride, whatever, working on those aspects, working through them, accept that they're part of us because we're all human beings and we all have, different emotions at different times, but just retraining ourselves to think in a different way. The patterns of behavior start to change, reduce the ego, start thinking about service to others, and then stuff starts to come back. And, it's a rising tide, isn't it? If you do a good deed for someone else, what do?
Yeah.
They feel like they want to do something reciprocal, not because you're forcing them to, because they just feel like that would be a good thing to do, and it just pays itself forward.
I think ego is a really interesting place, because we all have ego. I've certainly had ego, and you're not aware of it until someone points it out, and then you get upset because they pointed it out. But I think modern life, like I say, particularly with social media as well, there's a lot of ego out there, and everything is about me, that's what that's what I'm seeing anyway. And it's really hard to get away and say, well, but I need this for me, because maybe somewhere in your story you've been treated poorly, or people have been, I don't know, causing you problems because they're thinking of themselves. Do you think, well, this is how I've got to show up if I want to succeed, if I want to have the lifestyle I want, whatever it might be, I need to be like them. So then you have to be more egotistical, you have to become more selfish and more hard-nosed, more driven, and not always in a positive way. And it takes a while. It takes maybe something really negative that really impacts you, as in your case, your health issues really impacted you and have brought you where you are today and building this business. And I think, why do we have to allow ourselves to get to the point where things are so bad before we make that change?
Yeah.
Do we need to look at is ego a place to start and think back? So I was thinking about this recently, sort of revisiting my own story, thinking about what is it I'm not doing, what is it I should be doing, well, how can what I've experienced, how can I need to be reminded of what I'm doing to help others, rather than doing what I think other people want me to do and getting stressed because things aren't working, and then you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and it does affect your health afterwards, because you are at this high level of stress, anxiety, and insecurity, and getting back into why you're doing this, who you are, how is it going to work for you, but in a positive way also, that's going to have a positive impact moving forward on the people that are around you as well, if that makes any sense.
No,
I'm waffling.
It actually does, and it's like we're all human beings, and we've got ego, and we need it. It's, if we didn't have it, I don't know what would be left. But so you need it, but and I don't know the answers to this at all. But it's just, I guess, trying to check in on it. So what am I doing? Why am I doing this? What purpose? Is this an ego-led thing? Is it, or is, what's the reason behind it? And I think if we just check in, then we can be aware of it and maybe not make other people's lives a misery, because suddenly our ego's gone into explosive overdrive and we're like, doing something which we shouldn't really be doing to other people in a negative way to make ourselves feel better. So it's it's really a check-in. But like I said, I haven't got the answer to it. It's just a constant sort of
life experience, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, and as a CEO, I've got to have a certain amount of ego, because I've got to stand up and lead people and inspire people. So that does take ego to do it. I guess it's about, this is maybe the way to phrase it, is what's your North Star?
Right.
So where is your direction of travel? Like, what is it that you want to manifest and sort of reflect upon at the end of your life, to say, I accomplished this and it was really good. It was a really good outcome for everybody. So if your North Star is set in the right constellation
Mm.
and it's there for the right purpose, then actually, the sort of like the route and the mechanisms and the things that happen along the way are probably you can bring people along for the right reason, in the right spirit and the right intent. So I think having that North Star, and that North Star being something you're proud of, that it was beneficial, helps you sort of steer the right course, act in the right way, and inspire others.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's knowing, good to know that it's not an either or situation anymore. It's not a case of treatment or prevention, spirituality or science, that kind of thing. You can actually integrate everything together. You can have the medicine, you can have the treatment, as well as taking preventative measures. So it's just how you incorporate. And what I wanted to come to now, I mean, so in terms of where you are now with your Vitaspan, how in a way has this sort of how does that work? I'm making sense with Vitaspan, this integrative approach. How is that sort of in Vitaspan as a company?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, so at its heart, this is about empowering the individual to take complete control over their health and the journey that they need to take at that particular time to live a longer, healthier life. And like me, not everyone has worked abroad, but so a lot of people have. Certainly, everybody's more or less now travelled abroad for either holidays, etc. Increasingly, people are using private health and as well as public health, not because necessarily they want to, but because they have to. They're forced to. Increasing amounts of us are using complementary therapy. We're not just all rushing for pharmaceuticals. We're now sort of blending in lifestyle and supplements to support us. And as we talked about earlier, increasingly people are using wearable data to get insights and information, etc. The challenge with all of that is, if I ask a question, where is all of that data today? And do you have instant access to it immediately? Hands down, the answer is no. It's scattered, it's fragmented, it's lost in different systems, it's in emails, it's on hard drives, some of it's in the NHS app, some of it's on on a watch that you might use, etc. It's all over the place. And so if it's all over the place, it doesn't put you in control. And quite simply, what I want to deliver is the ability for you to go and see the next professional, and that professional to know exactly what they need to know about you before you turn up. So for example, this is not a sort of hardcore medical one, but if you were going to go and see a chiropractor, wouldn't it be great if you could share your x-ray with them before your appointment, so they can get an overview of your mechanics before they treat you, rather than sort of feeling around and asking you questions, is it sore here, etc., etc. Because if they had that, it would help them treat you more effectively. But you don't want to give them that information forever, because they don't need it, and quite frankly, they shouldn't have it. So permissioning them to access your x-ray for 30 minutes ahead of appointment, and then revoking their access, and doing that through a secure platform, is one of the core tenets that we've got in our system. So you can make sure the treatment that you're receiving is attuned to you, because the professional that you're seeing ahead of time has been able to reflect on whatever it is that you wanted to share with them ahead of your appointment. And that's game changer. I mean, it sounds so simple and sounds so obvious that we should all have this, but it doesn't exist because the way that systems are architected today. Data is trapped in these electronic health record systems. And quite frankly, it's not like it's your data, or you're not treated like it's your data. It's someone else's data that they may give you access to through an app, but you don't really have control over it. You can just view it, and you might not be able to view it in correlation with, or look at it in alongside something else, because they haven't architected the system to do it. They dictate how you can interpret and use that information. And I just don't want to live in a world like that, because of my own health journey. I had to take responsibility, and I had to find my path, which meant using a range of modalities. And increasingly, that's what we all want. We want control. So that's number one. The core tenet is your data, you're in control, you give people access to it, simple, secure, accessible, and permissionable. And the second thing is, all right, well, what about the poor people who are trying to support you in your health journey? The doctors, the nurses, the specialists, etc. they're using systems, particularly if they're part of big hospital networks, that are really designed to bill the patient. They typically come from America, these systems like Epic, Cerner, big platforms. They're fantastic administering a hospital, running a hospital. They're not terrific for the doctor or the care team to get information at their fingertips to immediately understand who's this patient and what's happened to them. And so our system is designed to basically give a visual representation of the patient in front of you and immediately be able to determine what's happened to them in the past, how they got in front of me, and what do I need to focus on, rather than trying to ask them millions of questions about health history and do you remember this and what happened then and what medication you're on. We want to give them that full picture immediately so that they can act upon it. And then the way in which we structure the data is we curate it, we standardize, and we normalize, and we create what's called a common data model, which basically in plain English means that you can compare and contrast data along different timelines. So I can basically then use that data to power algorithms that predict the likelihood of things happening to you with an extremely high degree of accuracy. So for example, cardiovascular disease, we can predict 10 years in advance whether you're high, low, or medium risk with a 93% accuracy, which is far higher than the systems which are currently used within the NHS.
That's incredible.
And that's been trained on 15 years worth of data and about 30 million plus patient records. And we decided, rather than spending years in research doing this ourselves, we partnered with a hospital group called Apollo Hospitals, who run about 6,000 clinics and hospitals and pharmacies in Southeast Asia, who are recognized as the world leaders in predictive analytics. And we're the only company to have global access to their algorithms that predict cardiovascular, prediabetes, liver fibrosis, and a whole host of others to come as well. So the premise of that is, if we were to tell you you've got a 93% chance of developing cardiovascular disease in the next 10 years if you carry on doing what you're doing now, we want to motivate you to do something about that. And the earlier that we warn you, the more integrative and sort of lifestyle approach you can take to reduce that risk, rather than what happened to my father-in-law, which is tragic. We were living in America. This was in 2015. The day before he was due to visit us and get on a plane, he dropped dead of a heart attack.
Oh, God.
He had no symptoms, no warnings. And we were left to pick the pieces up and try and figure out, well, what the hell happened? How did it happen? What could we have done? And basically, we just want to eradicate that. We want to give people early warning signals so that they can incorporate the necessary change to reduce the risk and live longer, healthier lives.
So, yeah, I mean, so from that perspective, you're not only making it easier for your specialists to look at that big picture, where you've been and what they need to do, and maybe pinpoint exactly where your next plan or treatment comes from, but then it's also picking up future problems so you can then start getting back in control and taking those preventative measures.
Yeah. And back to what we said earlier, all the body wants to do is a perfect organism. It just wants to be in homeostasis, in balance. It's designed to be in balance. So if you give it the right environment and the right fuel, it will be in balance. You know, that's what it's designed to do. And so you can incorporate lifestyle changes to get it back into balance. You don't have to have what I call sort of the nuclear option, which is pharmaceuticals, as the first step every time. I'm not saying there's not a place for them. There certainly is, but it's not something's wrong, right, I'm going to take a pill and it's going to solve my problem. It's back to what I experienced, which is, okay, let's go back to the root cause. Let's go, figure out what's caused that issue, that symptom, and work on it. And then you put in place a structure, a scaffolding around you, which I think should be spiritual, emotional, physical, and mental, to help you be in balance, in homeostasis, and live a longer, healthier life. So basically, I want to play a part in that.
Yeah,
a small part. You know, I can't do everything, but I can certainly help you have a platform.
Make it easier for people.
Yeah,
and with your company, with Vitaspan, is that now, Are you sort of getting it into more sort of practices? Is it more like a practice-based thing?
Yeah, so the idea with Vitaspan is we want to democratize access to it, which basically means we want everybody on the planet to be able to sign up if they wanted to and join our platform. Now, that's called taking a sort of a B2C, business to consumer approach. We want to do that, but we're not going to do it at launch because it's very costly to acquire a consumer, because you've got to do massive amounts of advertising and marketing, etc. So our first port of call is actually to businesses, and these are private providers who have got patients who they want to provide a platform to incorporate all of their health data. So it'll incorporate the provider's data on that patient. It will incorporate the NHS data on that patient, any wearables, and any other provider that patient has been to. And now the business, the private clinic that's given that to their patient has got access to see the full picture for that patient and see the overview, and then obviously can start using our AI to predict conditions, etc. They can start using our platform to have much more informed consultations with their patients. They can use our face scan to monitor the patient's heart rate, blood pressure, heart rate variability over time whilst the patient's in the real world.
That's interesting. You say face scan. It's like, how can a face scan? Explain to me. I'm not good on tech. So explain to me how the face can pick that up from a face scan. How can it pick that up from the face scan?
Yes. Firstly, to set anybody's minds at rest, we do not store the video. So the video is used to monitor some data, but then we immediately destroy the video. But the video is fired up. There's a digital mesh. You can't see it, but a digital mesh is overlaid on a person's face. It then looks at coloration change, blood flow, and micro movements. Oh, right. And from that, it then derives heart rate variability, blood pressure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the video is destroyed, but the data exists. Nice, and then we use that data to create biomarkers. So energy levels, mental stress resilience, sleep score, et cetera. And the intent is not actually to look at the individual reading on any particular day. It's to look at the trend over time. And particularly, if you're starting to see like the mental stress score is constantly in an elevated state, we want to alert the care team looking after the patient so that they can proactively reach out and say, hey, look, I've noticed for the last 3 months your mental stress score has been going in the wrong way. Why don't you come in? Let's have a chat, see what's going on. Because if you catch stress early before it manifests in dis-ease, you stop a whole load of problems manifesting in the future. So it's a way in which we, again, evolved in the prevention space by looking at that heart rate variability and these other biomarkers to help people live longer, healthier lives.
Yeah. I mean, it's just incredible where technology is going in that sense. I mean, obviously, technology can be incredibly dangerous, but when it comes to medicine and the progress, and obviously, clearly with what you're doing, it's going to make a huge difference to people's lives. And I think that's really important. I always say your health is your wealth. It's a saying lots of people have heard, I'm sure. But I think what you can do to not only speed up your recovery and save yourself a lot of money in the long term, by using these preventative measures and catching things before they actually happen. And I think that has got to be the most positive thing from all of this.
Yeah, the key thing, it's a really, really, really important aspect. It's about trust. So if I'm the custodian of your data, and let me be clear, it's your health data, it's not mine, it's yours. We are not going to flog that data. We're not selling it to big pharma to make a ton of money off of your information. It's in the system for your benefit.
And I think that's really the thing. A lot of the time you don't feel like you have any control over it. You've got to ask permission for your own information.
Yeah, like you look at the NHS, you've got to opt out of the NHS. So if you don't opt out, your data can be used, etc. Which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but it's just the dynamic. You have to not opt in, you opt out. But the other thing is, you look at things like Apple, right? Apple are progressing with the watch. I think the watch has now just got clinical approval for hypertension risk, basically. Got FDA clearance for hypertension risk. So on one hand, it's wonderful that frictionless support can be provided because now you've got your Apple Watch. It's now got more health metrics and sleep monitoring and blah, blah, blah in it. Isn't that great? it's less friction for the individual because they're not changing behavior. It's just carry on your normal life and you're being monitored and tracked, etc. So there is a market, and I'm sure there will continue to be a market. But on the other hand, for folks who are interested in sovereignty and they don't want their data being concentrated in the hands of very few, big tech companies that, let's be honest, haven't always got your best interests at heart. They're typically trying to flog you something. Yeah. Do you really want the concentration of power in very few hands, where they're not only monitoring what your social media activity is, they get a sense of the way that you think, but they're now actually collecting your medical data to see how you respond and how you're reacting to triggers. I mean, that is an extraordinary amount of information in very few companies' hands. So we're simply an alternative to that. We're basically saying, look, yes, it's really interesting and wonderful to have data at your fingertips and access and control and all the rest of it. But we want to flip that. This is a sovereign system for you, not for us to monetize your data and go and flog it. So we want to empower you to take control, not be controlled by us then sending you stuff because we know you're going to react in a certain way and you're going to buy something because now we've got all of this biometric data on you to then stimulate you to do something that you may not actually want to do or may not be in your best interest to do.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense, because I think we are getting less trustworthy of these big organizations. I think particularly when it comes to your health and something that's very personal, having that control, knowing it's in your hands, it's not free for all for every company out there, I think is really important. I think we need to have some sort of sovereignty when it comes to our bodies.
Yeah.
Look, Mark, this has been a fantastic conversation, really eye-opening. And I think your journey, I always love to hear these stories of people's own journey and how that develops into their business as well. And from yours is going to make a huge difference to so many people's lives. And I hope more people, including the NHS, get hold of this and start using it. I think there's going to be more and more people who would really value from having something like this at the tip of their hands or their fingers or whatever the saying is. So look, if people want to find out more about you, maybe they have a similar journey, they just want to connect with you, or whether they're a business that thinks joining with Vitaspan is going to be something that's going to be important for them, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I think that the best way is if you're on LinkedIn, send me a LinkedIn message. So Mark Jackson, and the company name is Vitaspan, Vitaspan. You can also send me an email at mark.jackson@vitaspan.ai. Those would probably be the best method. But I'm genuinely passionate about this space. So anybody who wants to support us, wants to partner with us, has got interesting ideas about how we truly democratize this and bring this to everybody, I'd love to talk to them.
Well, there you go. You've got the information. Get in touch with him today. Start helping your patients take back control and help in that process and making health and wellness much easier, much more accessible. So for today, I'd really like to thank you, Mark, for sparing your time, so I know how busy you are, to talk to me on my little podcast. It's great to have you here. And thank you, everyone, for listening. I look forward to you joining us next time on Unleash Your Inner Athlete. Thank you.